So I guess we can start. So first of all, welcome to our panel.
Thank you.
How did you feel the audience this far?
Great, really engaged audience. So it was, sometimes it's difficult when you're standing speaking to get some feedback, but there were plenty of people in the room, and so it looked like everybody was engaged and listening. So great.
Awesome. So you've been present actually as a company in Cluj for quite a long time. And you grew substantially, as I could observe you. I'm in the same ecosystem right here, so congratulations for that.
Thank you.
How do you see the growth on your local branch, for starters?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we've been here. Is this microphone working, by the way? Maybe I'll hold it a bit closer here. We've been here for, I think, 11 years now. So we started in Cluj with 20 people, and we've kind of really grown since then. We have about 600 people now. And the thing that's always attracted us to Cluj and kept us growing is the availability of talent on the local market. So, you know, there's so much kind of technical talent, particularly coming out of the universities, builds that really kind of strong talent pool. So pretty much every kind of skill that we've looked for as we've grown as a company, we've been able to find here. So we've always been really keen to kind of invest more in Cluj. And I think as that ecosystem, as you say, kind of continues to go from strength to strength and build up. So actually, although it provides some competition, we're very happy when other companies set up here because it attracts more people to the market and it grows the market overall. So yeah, we're still thinking about, you know, other types of work we can put here, not just technology work, but maybe some other business skills as well. So yeah, there's still a kind of bright future for the Cluj team.
And have you felt any bottlenecks this far in order to grow locally or globally? I see that you're present in like 4 countries. I believe you have like maybe a cultural something in many ways, like different engineering techniques that universities prepare their own in. So have you encountered any such bottlenecks this far?
Not really. I mean, the only thing we acknowledge that if you're working in different countries and different sites, that brings some complexity. So we know that, you know, it's much more complex. If you have your whole team in one location, that's easier to manage. You know, there's less travel, but you really struggle to recruit talent. And we were struggling to recruit talent in London and Dublin. So our sites in Porto and Cluj give us that kind of extra capacity to kind of attract talented people. You're right, there are cultural differences between different countries and different locations. That, I think, actually adds a lot of value in terms of, you know, diversity is a good thing because people bring new ways of thinking. So what we do is we try and make sure that we're always sharing best practice between those sites so that every site realizes it can learn something new from one of the other locations. And I think that's, you know, the culture that we've kind of encouraged is one of being open-minded and of really kind of wanting to learn. And so I think if we can continue to get that right, that means that we can take the best of what's been done in one area and then maybe start thinking about how we use it in a different area. So everybody benefits in the group.
So when it comes to scaling right now, because I know you have like, I guess you're one of the top platforms that manages more or the most concurrent sessions for their users. How are you tackling with that? How are you scaling? Because you keep scaling, you keep growing. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's been a long and complex journey for us. And just to give some context, you know, the betting exchange is our kind of highest volume platform, and we handle at peak something like 2,000 transactions per second on that platform. So it's pretty high scale. What we've done is we've tried to innovate and we've tried to use new technologies as they come on the market. So 10 years ago, that platform was run in Oracle because that was the highest scale that we could get. You know, since then, we've seen a whole lot of new technologies. So we're using streaming technology, we're using Kafka, for example, much more extensively now. We're using lightweight services because we can get the throughput from those and horizontal scalability. As I talked about in my presentation, we're using microservices because that means you can start clustering services and get horizontal scale that way. So we've employed a whole load of different techniques, and you know, as technology innovates and as new things come on the market, we try them, and the ones that give us an advantage we stick with. So you know, our architecture is constantly changing, and our platform is constantly changing to keep up.
Okay, I have so many questions for you, but I believe I should let people in the audience, maybe they have a few questions. Guys, this is like a unique opportunity, right?
I would like to ask, what is
Sure.
the future of Hi, Paul. I'd like to ask, where do you see the future of personalization in gaming?
I think it's a really exciting future, and actually I think personalization, not just in gaming, but in a lot of sort of consumer and media industries, is going to make a real difference. So I think we're gradually moving from a world where it's a sort of one-size-fits-all product to one where it's much more tailored for the individual. So for us, for example, we know that different types of customers like to play different games or bet on different sports. So there's no point putting a homepage in front of a customer that has a whole load of things on it they're not interested in. And so a lot of what we're doing with personalization is looking at, can we use the data that we have about our customers to understand what they like doing, and then make the experience easier for them, kind of frictionless, so that they can get to what they want much quicker. And we're also surfacing things maybe they didn't think about. So one of the things we're looking at is the sort of lookalike recommendation. So people like you sometimes bet on this kind of sport or this kind of market, kind of surface up those opportunities for people. That's a journey that we're going on. I think our team in Australia are actually more advanced on that. They've done some really good work in the last year about personalization, and they've learned a lot. So we're trying to take some of the learnings from there and apply those in Europe.
Okay. And do you see that fantasy sports will gain more terrain? You said about acquiring to other companies in the US.
Yeah, well, the US is undergoing a big change because very recently, sports betting was legalized, or at least the blocker to it at a federal level was removed. So now individual states are thinking about how they legalize that. What that means is you're going to see more and more sports betting sites, including ours, in the US. We don't quite know what that will do to the fantasy sports market. It may be that a lot of customers who used to bet on fantasy sports don't feel the need to do that anymore because they can bet on real sports. It may be that fantasy sports carries on as a sort of a core offering. So we're kind of waiting to see how that develops. But I think we're in a strong position because we can offer lots of different types of products to customers and then move with the market.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the last question, at least on my side, would be, after all that integration, what do you consider to be the most rewarding now that you look back after January onwards?
I think the most rewarding thing was the team that we created. That was, as I said, quite early on in the journey, and we knew we had to do that first before we tackled some of the difficult technical problems. But by creating a team that knew how to work together and knew what they were good at and what they were going to focus on, that gave us the opportunity to then tackle all the problems that came up later. And I think that's a huge asset for us as a business because building technology teams is hard and maintaining technology teams is hard. And I think as a technology leader, that's really your number one job, to make sure you've got the right people in the team and they're all kind of engaged and know what they're doing. So I think the most rewarding thing for me was creating the team, and continues to be growing that team.
So thank you guys for letting me having all the other questions for Paul. So how do you believe, or which one do you believe is or should have the biggest emphasis as per your business? As you mentioned, you have struggles in engineering and in business. Which one of these two parts do you believe should have the biggest emphasis, again, as per your business?
I think it's really difficult to separate the two because we're a digital business. We have a retail operation in the UK and Ireland, but the majority of our business is online. And with a digital business, you can't really separate what's technology from what's the kind of commercial and business side, because the way you interact with your customers is through technology, is through sites and apps and so on. So I think the kind of the best solution is one where the commercial side and the technology side work really closely together as a partnership. I'm always I'm never very keen on when technology departments refer to their internal customers, because I think it's not really a customer-supplier relationship, it's a partnership relationship, and I think each function can bring different strengths and abilities to the table, and as long as they all work together well, then you'll get the right end product.
And talking about that, what's your strategy in iterating? You have an enhancement or feature request from the customers. As you say, it's a partnership, right? You should have a relationship there, and therefore whatever they suggest, they should see it, or they should have the feedback as fast as possible integrated into your platform. What's your strategy in iterating that?
Well, it's one of the things we're working very hard on this year, because we've been on this long integration journey, 2 years, when we had a big goal to achieve and we couldn't really do very much else. Now that that's behind us, we're spending a lot more time thinking hard about what customers want and looking at what our competitors are doing. And not everything that our competitors do is right for us, because we have different customers. So, but thinking hard about which innovations we want to adopt in our platform, what kind of customer feedback we want. The other thing we're putting a lot of focus on is being much more iterative and much more kind of test and learn. So trying to get away from the culture of taking a long time to deliver a sort of fully finished product and thinking about how could we get something to customers earlier and get some feedback from them to see whether they like it or not. Because sometimes you can't ask customers what they want because they don't always know. Sometimes you have to put something in front of them and then see how it goes and see whether they like it or not. So we've released
testing, like beta testing.
Yeah, and the whole minimum viable product kind of philosophy. So we've released quite a few features recently where we've consciously released them when they're still quite immature, but they're good enough to get some feedback and for customers to start using them and then to tell us what they want us to do rather than us kind of continue with a predefined roadmap. That's something that we've only really been able to start doing since the start of this year once we finish the integration. So we're kind of getting better and learning as we go along.
And sticking to the process side of the business, I've heard that you have a branch in Australia.
Yeah.
How do you handle time zone difference?
It's difficult. Between the UK and Australia, the time zone is either 9 hours or 11 hours, depending on which part of the year, and which makes life difficult. Again, they've worked largely independently. In Europe, because we had the integration to focus on, we haven't put much time and effort into kind of thinking more about collaboration between Europe and Australia. We're thinking a lot hard about that. I was in Australia last week, talking to the team there about how we can work more closely together. The time zone difference really means that somebody's either got to stay late or get up early, and then you try and use kind of collaboration tools as much as possible. But what we don't want is to get to a world where people have to write long documents and email them to each other, because it's a very slow process and it's prone to miscommunication. So we're always keen to have personal communication where we can. It's just a case of trying to find the right way of doing it.
And now towards engineering, as you have, again, one of the largest platforms around the world, how much have you optimized of your platform using AI or machine learning, any of these?
That, for us, that's really in the infancy at the moment. We haven't done a lot with it. We have, for things like detecting fraud, we've had AI-based tools for a while that we've worked with kind of different providers, and that's worked very well. We're only now starting to think about how we could apply it more widely. So we're looking at chatbots, for example, because one of the things, during busy periods, we get a large numbers of customers contacting us by chat, and that creates a lot of stress in our contact centers. A lot of those contacts are for quite straightforward queries like, can I reset my password? So we're looking at, can we use, bring in chatbot automation to handle those kind of queries so that our advisors are kept for the more complex stuff that human beings are better at. So that's an example where we're kind of moving forward on that. And then we're looking at, a number of other different areas, particularly in the analytics space, kind of better analytical models to understand customer behavior and start to make predictions. I talked about personalization. I think AI and personalization go hand in hand, because the AI can really give you very good predictive models about what customers are going to like, and then you can personalize the site based on that. So that's something we're looking quite hard at the moment.
Actually, I was aiming for a little bit more because as you're right now, you want growth. It's clear that you focus on growing the company in structure as in people. But right now, actually, for quite a few years, we are in a phase where everybody's trying to optimize as much as they can so that they can avoid leaning on just people. They prefer technology and automation more because they're more predictable, let's say, right? So how is this part of predictability resonating with your growth plan?
I think, it's such an early stage, it's very hard to see how that's going to go. So we are thinking about how we can use AI to help us, so that we don't have to continue to grow people at the same rate. I don't think, there are jobs that people do and people are good at, and I don't think, you're ever going to get away from companies being run by people. So I think the real value of AI will be in automating the tasks that are kind of repetitive and that aren't very value add for people. So I think as we start to look at other business processes, there's potential opportunity for AI, but it's such an early stage, and I don't think anybody's come up with a real kind of, foolproof AI solution that allows you to kind of automate anything that's sort of complex or involves interacting with customers kind of deeply. So I think it'll be a while before we see anything like that.
Okay. This TV screen actually gives me a lot of pleasure. No questions from the audience, so I get the pleasure to entertain you a lot here. Guys, any further?
Thank you. Hi. Talking about innovation, do you use kind of a structured process for innovation? Where do the sources come? How do you tackle globally innovation within Paddy Power, Betfair?
I think innovation is one of the hardest things to manage, and people talk about having an innovation process, but that can really kind of stifle innovation. Sometimes I think that the best thing you can do as a leader is to get out of the way of innovation, because people tend to be creative and innovate naturally. Particularly in technology, when we think about kind of technology innovation, teams will naturally look to new solutions, new ways of doing things, and new ways of solving problems. And I think the role of a leader is to kind of encourage that and to kind of help them do it, and to accept that not everything works, right? Sometimes you try something and it doesn't work, but as long as you learn from it, that's the most valuable thing. When we think about product innovation, I think that's a bit harder, and there's a number of different sources. So, ideas do come from customers. They tell you things they wish you had or they like. You can look at what kind of competitors are doing maybe in other industries, so things that have worked in, other forms of retail or other online businesses potentially could be applied in our industry. And then you have people who are kind of passionate about our product and have those ideas themselves. And I think the key thing is to balance that level of risk. Innovation comes with risk. If it's a dead certainty, it's probably not very innovative. So you have to make room for things that you're going to try with the full knowledge that they might fail. Now that's difficult, for any business to contemplate. Businesses like certainty. So it's just a way of thinking about your product roadmap that kind of creates the space for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Paul. So I'm an insider, but if I were someone from outside, seeing the diversity in the short-term usage of public clouds, is diversity an issue, or does diversity equal complexity? Would that be a challenge? How are we going to handle that?
Sure. You're right, it does create complexity. It gives you some advantages in terms of not being locked into one vendor. The way we're looking at that is through containers, because we think the one thing that all those clouds have in offer is they offer containerized solutions. So we think that by standardizing on containers, we can make our life a lot simpler, because it should then be easy to deploy to different clouds in the same way. That hasn't been proven yet, so we're kind of working through it, but that's what we hope.
Well, thank you, sir. It's been my pleasure, at least.